Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Project 180. My name is Kevin McGowan, and today we have a great guest, Karley Babb. Hi, Karley.
Hey, Kevin, how are you?
I am great, thanks. How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Good. Now, full disclosure, Karley and I used to work together. We had some time together at St. John Ambulance. They are still with SJA, and I asked them to come and join this conversation today to talk about complex projects in the not-for-profit space. I know that project was or is still very complex in a lot of ways, but I'm wondering, Karley, if you can maybe tell a bit about yourself and the role that you've been doing.
Yeah, like you said, thank you for the introduction. My name is Karley. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the National Facilitation Lead for St. John Ambulance's partner program. So what that means is I work with community organizations who send us representatives, just people from community as well, who are looking to access nasal naloxone for their community in an accessible way. So it's a low barrier program where we have these representatives come with me. We spend a day together. We go through the curriculum together. I teach them how to train or how to teach the program. So they get the curriculum afterwards. They have access to those PowerPoints, to all of that information. We run through it together, and then they can take it and they can make it accessible to their community so they can make the changes they need, based on things that the community needs, whether it needs to be a shorter program, whether it needs to be, more visual based, if there's a literacy, decrease in that area, but just making sure that that information is accessible to folks so they can adapt it and put it into use and use nasal naloxone to respond to the accidental drug poisoning crisis that's sweeping the nation and North America right now.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's a great explanation and incredible job that you and your team are doing. But let's talk about expectations a little bit in terms of, I know you're doing incredible work and supporting a lot of different organizations. You are kind of rocking a hard place, I suspect, in a lot of ways, because you've got the funder up here, and we can Health Canada, the government of Canada is funding this program and a lot of others. So you certainly have to balance a lot of expectations in terms of what they're requesting, but also balancing the needs of individual organizations. So from kind of a stakeholder management perspective, how do you find working with those two very distinct groups, and how do you balance that out when you're doing your work?
Yeah, it is very much a rock and a hard place a lot of the time. You're right, meeting the expectations that are coming, specifically from the government. They're so stringent. They have to be fair across a lot of things. We have to be meeting very specific milestones and meeting, large reporting mandates. So we have a lot of things that we have to follow. We have a lot of information that we're required to give them in order to be able to do the program that we're doing and distribute the things that we're doing. I think the best way that we can balance that relationship between having Health Canada as a funder and those requirements, and then also being true to the community and meeting the needs that they have, is to be completely transparent on both sides. I think the way that we navigate that is letting Health Canada know that, there are these things that are barriers for us in providing the care that community needs, letting them know what that is, advocating for the community, and trying to find a way to work collaboratively with them, and then also being clear with community in what we are and aren't able to do. We get a lot of feedback about stuff, about how much naloxone is needed, about what kind of training is needed, where those barriers are coming into place, and trying to work with them inside of the mandate that we have, and then taking that information back and forth between the two partners to be able to try to find the most realistic solution that we can that's going to meet everybody's needs.
Well, and I mean, great answer, specifically, but and that covers a lot of the expectations from Bob, because it's one set of expectations up here, right? And not to put them on top, but we'll put them on top of the pyramid. At the other side of it, you've got all these organizations who have very different expectations, and I mean, they're all around the country. Every province, every territory. I know that much. So how do you try and create something that is going to be standard, across all these different populations, but still allow for some adaptability?
Yeah, I think as our program has progressed, as you know, you started the program, which is wonderful. It started back at the beginning of COVID when, the poisoning numbers increased, and it's grown a lot in that time. We've been able to branch out and offer a lot of different programs throughout this initial funding that we got. So we work with frontline organizations who are working with folks who are precariously housed. That's one branch. We offer training there and naloxone. We work with the general public to offer training and naloxone in that way. We have the Train the Trainer program, which I do, and then we have a national community of practice for folks interested in and impacted by the accidental drug poisoning crisis to come together and to learn and share. So as the program has evolved and things have changed and community have been, very clear and very honest and very vocal about the needs that they have and the things that they're looking for, we've tried very hard to adapt the entire program to that, on a larger scale by creating these bigger programs where we are able to offer Train the Trainer and we're able to offer community of practices for folks to get together and talk, but also in a much smaller and more direct way where we can work with people and they can talk to us. We're not this monolith that can offer one type of thing because we know that a solution for everybody's a solution for nobody. So we need to be able to make that a very specific kind of care. So having that open and honest communication with folks through our community engagement team, through the program management, and then through the facilitators as well, taking that feedback from organizations and then saying, I live in this part of the country, we are experiencing a large increase of poisonings right now. I need extra naloxone. Can you send me more? And being able to say, yeah, a bulk shipment is coming your way because another part of the country doesn't need as much right now because they're having a decrease in that kind of poisoning. And then also being able to look at what success looks like for different folks. So in my role, working with people who are coming from all walks of life, we have people with lived and living experience. We have people who are coming from, commercial security. We have folks who have been teaching harm reduction for 25 years. So there's a lot of different people that are coming in and understanding that success is going to look different for each person. So, thinking about, this person has this type of education, they have this kind of understanding of the program, how much have they grown in the time that we've been able to spend together, and do they have those core basic concepts down? And then what ways can I support them additionally, when we have someone else who needs a little bit less support, being able to take that focus from that person because they're already, thriving and growing, and then taking that to someone who maybe needs a little bit extra support, a little bit extra care to get them to that level where they feel confident to do the things that they want to do.
Well, it's fascinating to me. I mean, and you mentioned that, yes, I helped, launch this program a few years ago, and yes, I was part of that team. So I know certain things, but obviously a lot has changed since I left. So how would you say your role has evolved in terms of managing all this? Because I know originally, and you were kind of an outreach person, you were making connections and building this network. Mm-hmm. Which is a skill set unto itself. I mean, being able to communicate and build and build trust from an organization can be very complicated. Can you share a bit about how you managed to do that and just your personal approach to building those kind of connections and communicating like that?
Yeah, my role has changed significantly in my time with St. John Ambulance. I've worked every job that we have, which is great. I love that. I love being able to, say that I can understand the struggles that someone is having here, being able to support people. And then, like you said, building those connections as my initial position. So that transformed into me starting the accidental drug poisoning community of practice. So working into that, branching out, finding community partners to come and work with us to deliver information that they found pertinent, that we know that the community found pertinent. We are looking for those voices of people with lived and living experience, putting that relevant information at the front, following that slogan that we're told all of the time, nothing about us without us, listening to the people who are affected by our programs and who are benefiting from our programs and who also might be harmed by our programs. So taking all of that in, forming an advisory committee, but, again, it is very hard to build genuine, honest relationships with people when you are representing an organization, right? You're coming as the organization. You're not coming as yourself a lot of the time, or that's how you're perceived. But being able to break down those walls with folks and be able to be, I'm real, I'm an actual person. And, taking the approach that we take as this program of we want to meet your needs. I'm not here to offer you that one size fits all solution because I know that's not how that works, especially in the realm of, social service work and nonprofits. A lot of the time, that's what we're told to do, but we know that that's ineffective. It's not going to work. So showing up and being genuine and being honest and, taking that time to hear what folks have to say to you instead of saying, this is what I can offer. Do you want it or not? right? Allowing them to come to me and say, this is what I need. This is the struggles that I'm having. Here's what I'm seeing in my community. Being able to commiserate, taking the time to, do my own research about that, like following the drug trends that are happening in different parts of the country, knowing what's happening in Kamloops versus what's happening in Vancouver. Taking the time to do that, knowing which organizations are working together so I can build that network, not only with the trust of one person, but I can show the rest of the community that we're here to show up. I'm not just here to be the face of a large organization that is going to be cold and you're going to have no personal connection with. I think, in the 3 years that I've been with St. John Ambulance, I've obviously built a lot of connections through the different arms of the program that I've been working in. But knowing that, connections that I made in that first year in 2021 when I started, and having them message me last month and say, hey, I know that you don't work in this part of the program anymore, but I know that you're going to listen. I need extra naloxone. I know you guys might be shutting down. Can you please send me some bulk shipments? This is my last resort. And knowing that they're going to be met with a human approach, and me saying, I'm going to see what I can do. I'm going to work as hard as I can to make something happen for you. I don't know if it's going to be on the scale that you need it to be, but I can promise I can do something. So knowing that they're not going to be met with a very business approach, as much as it is a business, but meeting people with humanity and empathy and kindness and taking the time to hear what people have to say. And a lot of the time it's just letting people complain. Life is hard, especially when you're dealing with all of this stuff, but giving people the space to be people, I think, instead of just showing up as a business person, makes a big difference.
I really appreciate how you describe that, because we're talking very specifically about an industry right now, but the skills you're talking about go obviously well beyond that. It's empathetic leadership, it's authentic leadership, right? And that's what you're representing in your team. And I suspect the others are as well. You have to hire a certain type, I think, to work in that environment. That's, I think, a challenge for a lot of leaders or managers or project managers or whoever you want to describe, whatever term you want to throw at it, to really be that authentic and empathetic and kind. Because sometimes you really feel like you got to toe the line, you got to do things a certain way, and that just doesn't work with people. It's very, I think, counterintuitive. Is that something that you found natural for yourself, or is that something you kind of had to learn and perfect along the way?
I think that's something that comes natural for me. I've worked in social work for 10 years now. So I've had time to build those skills. And, as much as I am extending those type of skills externally, when I think about the style of leadership that I bring internally to a team of the people that I'm working with, I'm not in a management role right now. I was last year, and then I switched to a more community-facing position. But, in the past, when I've been in leadership roles, I think the best thing that I can do working in nonprofit in a place where people feel so disenfranchised all the time, right? We're underfunded. We're told what we can and can't do. We're told there's all of these limitations, and then knowing what community needs, because we're these people who listen, because we take on all of these problems as people who care, just feeling beat down all of the time. So I think my form of leadership when I'm in those roles in this specific field, is to make it 100% collaborative, right? There's no hierarchy. It's very straight across. I want to hear what everybody has to say. Anytime there's a solution that needs to be made or to be found, it needs to be done by a group. Me making a decision for everybody a lot of the time in these situations just further disenfranchises people. They don't feel like they have a say in the work. They don't feel like they have any power in that. And just making sure that, as much as I'm listening to the voices of the people that we are serving, making sure that I'm listening to the voices of the people that we're working with, so that everybody can feel empowered and uplifted.
One key phrase I think you said a few minutes ago, Karley, was the something I've learned and tried to apply everywhere since I heard it, was the nothing about us without us. It certainly works in the field where you're working, but I find it's transferable as well in terms of, like when I first became, a manager in a job like 100 years ago, I made the classic new manager mistakes of saying yes to things and, not consulting, the team. Oh yeah, we can do that, boss. No problem. Just kind of shoving the stuff down the line. Which was a horrible idea, right? Because now your team hates you.
Yeah, exactly. But you're meeting deadlines.
yeah, but come on, guys, we got to do it. This is really important. Like, is it really? But that element of conversation, of negotiation, of working together collaboratively. It's
Mhm.
okay to be a leader, but you can't just be the jerk boss. There's a real refined skill set that you have to build there in terms of being able to set your ego aside
Mhm.
and just work with a group collaboratively. So it's an amazing part of what you're doing, but it's something I think that it's a skill that's lacking across a lot of organizations, certainly from my experience. But I think it's pretty critical just to be able to have a good time while you're working. You have to have good relationships with everyone, not just the outward facing clients, but the internal folks you're working with, and just making decisions and trying to
Yeah.
impress the boss or hit a certain KPI isn't necessarily the best way to go.
Yeah. On top of that, I think that, listening to people making those decisions together, something that I learned from you and, saw very strongly from you in a leadership role was, treating people like humans, which was a big thing. And, something that's not often done, especially in these high pressure situations where you have to deliver all the time. You're meeting such specific, guidelines about stuff, but, being like, you're not on your game today because you're not feeling well. Maybe you're a little bit anxious, maybe you're a little bit sick. Take the time to go rest and then come back tomorrow, which was wonderful. I was so grateful for that. We're all people trying our best. Life happens outside of work, unfortunately, right? We have those pressures that are mounting, and we have, things happening to us. We have illnesses, we have family, we have friends. So making sure that we're able to find that balance, that work-life balance is so important. And that was something that you modeled very well, and I'm so grateful for that. And I think something that I was able to take forward when I stepped into leadership role.
Well, thanks. That was nice of you
Of
to say
course.
that. Appreciate it. It's not why I invited you here, Karley.
No, I know, but I'm allowed to say nice things about you too.
Now, I want to maybe pause for a second because we've got a bunch of people on the call, and I want to make sure that people have an opportunity to jump in and ask questions or provide anecdotes, stories, whatever you might like. Quick reminder: if you don't want your face on camera, that's fine. As we are recording this, I will cut out your audio, and I'll just put a text box up with your questions so you're not identified. So just want to make that to be clear. But if anybody has questions or thoughts, please jump in. I had a couple more questions for Karley, but I wanted to open up the floor as well. We've covered a lot of territory in terms of the opioid poisoning crisis specifically, but also working within not-for-profit, working with the expectations of funders and the expectations of community organizations, the clients you're serving. There's a lot of meat there. So I'm curious if anybody has thoughts or questions. Go ahead. And don't make me pick on people because I'll do that too. Someone's trying to join the call, so let me just let them in. And someone just joined. Oh, and Donna. Donna, you just raised your hand. Feel free. Go ahead. The mic is yours.
Yeah. Good morning. I do have a question related to the latter part of the conversation. When you all started talking about leadership, emotional intelligence, the way Karley is engaging with clients, I am very interested in using my platform, i.e., social media, to kind of explore these soft skills, leadership, emotional intelligence, communication. And I'm just wondering, you mentioned, Karley, that it's something that comes natural to you. But what I've noticed in project management, it does not come natural to everyone. As I am very interested in that and wanting to help others to grow, what tools have you used in working with people around you to help them to grow their soft skills?
Yeah, that's a great question. It does not come natural to a lot of people. You're right, especially folks in a more business-oriented situation. I think people go into social work because they have that inherent need or inherent skill a lot of the time. But being in situations where that's not the case, I think just making sure that when you are saying things to folks, and when you're talking about ideas, especially when it comes to that human aspect and relating to folks, that you're not just saying words, right? I think a lot of the time there's these buzzwords that are out there. There's empathy, there's self-care, there's all of these different things that are floating around in the stratosphere that we can see, and we can just put them into sentences, and they're basically a lot of the time plug-in and interchangeable, but that means nothing, right? It means nothing if we're saying things. We need to put things into action. If you are just being disingenuous with that, then obviously those skills aren't going to be fostered in other people. But making sure that you are showing by leading, right? Making sure that you're able to show those things and that you mean it and that you can show up with that kindness and, thinking about if this were to happen to me, how would I feel about it? And I think that's a good way to bring it in to the conversation. When I have those conversations, a lot of the time, I start it with, I don't like being told what to do. I don't like being talked at for 2 hours. I want to have this as a conversation, and I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to input. And then, building that conversation and then continuously showing up in the same way. I think consistency is a big thing, showing that it's not performative, and putting those things into action, and then having those conversations with folks where you break down those ideas. I worked in intellectual and developmental disabilities for a long time, and there were some very old school thoughts that were brought into that field from folks who had been in it for a long time on the way that we should be dealing with things. And I think taking the time to break down those ideas, it's exhausting. And it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time to really unpack things with folks. And a lot of the time people are resistant. I think this is something that I talk about, in the course that I teach all of the time, is that when you think something is right and you have been told your entire life that something is right, whether that be a leadership skill, whether that be a way to be productive, whether that be a way to interact with other people, or, just like a core truth for you, and then someone tells you, actually, you're wrong. It's extremely painful to hear that, and it's painful to unlearn that, and it hurts, and it's stressful and strenuous to relearn things, right? It's not an easy thing to do. So being gentle with people, mirroring that kindness and showing up with a way that you would want people to do it, and also giving people the space to be able to feel that grief and that anger and that frustration, and the space and the grace to be able to learn those new skills and to bring those. And, I think praise goes a long way. Telling people when you're proud of them, telling people, I really like the way that you handled that. That was great. I'm going to work that into things that I do. And just letting people know that, you see the value that they're bringing, and encouraging those really good communication skills and those behaviors and those approaches.
Sorry, Donna, did you have any follow-up there? I'll take that as a no. Great answer, Karley. And one thing that I've often thought, in terms of showing up and being, that empathetic, that genuine person all the time, I find it's super critical, because it shows that you really are that. And even if you don't necessarily believe it, you are that if you're showing up like that all the time. And it also builds up certainly credibility and forgiveness with the team for the times when you do maybe make a mistake, right? People are more willing to say, they're just having a bad day. I would figure you figure things out if you already have that good relationship, and you can demonstrate that you care about people. If you have that moment, you just go, people are more likely to still be forgiving and give you that grace if you're able to demonstrate that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Recognizing that, humans are humans when that comes to your team. And then also your team's able to give you that grace too. We can't all be our best selves 100% of the time. So, and I think also showing up with that authenticity, gives people the grace and the permission to do that as well, which I think is very important.
Mm-hmm. David Elliott, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Hi there. Good morning, everybody. Not so much a question, but just a comment, just to build on what's been said. And I really like the response to the last question, and just to build on that. To me, what I'm hearing, like a big thing is, I would say, intentionality. And people, and the other way I would talk about this is, it's a problem in organizations. Often they talk about a value, but then they don't live the value, and I think that's what you're talking about, is recognizing, how do I want to show up? Then how do I show up? And being conscious and intentional about that. And for me, one little piece I'll just throw in is I'm big on like framing. And I think you made a comment just a few minutes ago about, I think life happens to work. And then I would ask people to say, flip that around. What about work happens to your life? And when you do this kind of shift, things can look different. And am I dealing with an employee, or am I dealing with a person who happens to be an employee? And these kind of things help inform that intentionality that we want to show up, so we can be how we want to be, and all the things that you've spoken about. So there we go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, treating people like they are more than, outside of the nonprofit world, more than capital, right? Treating people like they're not just cogs, really valuing folks for who they are instead of what they can do for you. So I agree completely with what you just said. Most definitely.
That's great. Adebayo, Deborah, you had your hand up, but then it went down. I just want to make sure you had a chance to get in if you wanted to.
Yes, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Karley, for the great insight. I just want to ask, how do you inspire unpaid volunteers who are part of a non-profit project?
That's a hard one. People are spread so thin these days. We're all working so hard for so much less, and life is exhausting, and we're bombarded all the time by news and by things happening to us. So it can be very hard. But my experience is, it's hard to get people to show up, but really valuing the people who do show up, thanking people, showing how grateful you really are, making sure that, you're building those relationships so that those folks can reach out to you when they need to. And then building a strong relationship amongst the volunteers. I volunteer at a harm reduction drop-in in my city. And I think a large part of the thing that keeps me going back is, having relationships with the community members that I'm engaging with. So knowing that when I show up, some other folks that are accessing services are going to show up. I'm going to know that they're okay. I'm going to be able to see them and check in with them, but also the team that I'm working with, right? As much as it's an unpaid volunteer, you are still showing up and you're still working, and knowing that you have a team that supports you and that you enjoy being around is really great. So, whether that be fostering a team building event in that way, like having folks around in a situation where we're not doing work, I know it sucks, but a pizza party a lot of the time in nonprofit is what we have the money for. So if that's a pizza party, if that's, just meeting people out, going for a drink or going for a dinner or something like that. And, maybe you don't have the capacity to pay for that individually or as an organization, but inviting people, building that community within the realm of volunteers that are there, I think really helps people continue to show up. And then, meaningful acknowledgement of work, not like the pizza party is not an acknowledgement of the work. It is, just a thing that you can do together, but it's not a way to say thank you. Showing up genuinely, giving people that thanks and that praise that they need to be able to continue doing something that takes away from other parts of their lives and, maybe gives back to them, but it does take up time. It takes up emotional capacity. It takes up, mental capacity too. You don't have time to think about the other things when you're working with that. I don't know if anybody else has something that they want to add to that, if they have any experience with inspiring unpaid volunteers, because it's a very hard spot to be.
Yeah, I know that's a huge challenge. It's on any team, it's challenging because it's just, there's no blanket solution there either, right? Like you're saying, pizzas or small gatherings, things like that you can do, but everybody in any job, volunteer or paid, is looking has different expectations and different ideas of what a thank you is going to look like. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to balance that for sure. Dave, I think you got your hand up again. You want to jump in?
Yeah, I just want to kind of respond to that question, and two things. One, if people are familiar with Dan Pink's work, he wrote a book called Drive. And he talks about intrinsic motivation in there. And I think that it's really relevant. And it's kind of, when you don't have that salary piece in place and other benefits, you really need to manage the intrinsic motivation really quickly. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So the purpose with an NGO is one of the big things. But then it's managing that autonomy and mastery and basically giving some people some leeway with the work, not saying, here's our script, use the script, only use the script, stay in the box. They're not going to be too motivated with that kind of role. And then on the recognition piece, like what Karley said, and then I ran some recognition programs and did some research in that. And the amazingly, one of the most effective things is a true heartfelt thank you. So rather than paralyzing yourself and saying, oh, we can't buy everybody gold watches, we can't do this, we can't do that, say thank you. It goes a long way. And then some people might like some more public recognition. So I've noted, your contributions to the CEO or whatever. But it can be very simple, and very important as well. So.
Mhm.
That's good thinking there too, Dave. Thanks for sharing that. I know a couple other people just joined, but if anybody else has a thought, share, or question for Karley, please just click the raise hand button. I was going to ask you one more question, Karley. I know this is, again, I know because I worked with the team for a while, but I know it's a fully remote team. Everybody's working from their own cities, from their own home office, and obviously you're dealing with clients all over the place. What kind of challenges do you find with that in terms of building that team and the connections within the team, and then the connections outside? Do you find that the remote thing makes it more challenging, or is it just a different way of doing things?
Two-part answer. So one answer for working with clients, one answer for working with the team. I think that we are super lucky. This is the closest I've ever felt working with the team, and this is the first time I've ever done remote work. So I was very, very scared when I first started working here about what that was going to look like for me as someone who was so entrenched in community work. I was in the community every day. I was with my team every day. So I was very worried about what that was going to look like, but, showing up and I think being met with that authenticity that I'm looking for and the authenticity that I bring and, being able to have those open conversations. And I'm really lucky the leadership of the team that I'm on right now carves out time every 2 weeks for us to get together and spend an hour just doing something goofy. So we play Jackbox, we do team debates, it's been suggested that we cook together while on camera. So, taking the time to be people together because we don't get to have that aspect outside of work. And then when we are together for business meetings and whatnot, we make sure to do something, that is the typical, like a group business dinner, but then also going and doing something like karaoke or, going to mini golf or going and doing something fun together that is, a lot more of a leisure activity than it is we're going to sit and be formal together, but being able to be people, which is really wonderful. I'm very lucky with the team that we got, and co-working is a wonderful thing too. Just being signed into a call together, I think really helps with that loneliness and with building that relationship within the team. It feels more like you're in an office, which is nice, being able to be just in silence with another person and another body. But when it comes to the clients, I think this was a very easy transition. I think because of the scope of our specific project, we are operating nationally. So being able to have those connections with folks across the country happened pretty organically, especially being in the COVID environment, right? It was the time where everybody had just transitioned. I came on in 2021. The norm at that time was Zoom calls, whether you were in the same city or whether you were across the country. So that was a very smooth transition, but it also gave us that opportunity to be able to have such a far reach. With doing that, I think it was really wonderful that we were able to build connections within community as well. So sometimes there would be somebody in Cape Breton who didn't know that there was somebody else in Cape Breton, and being able to bring those two people together on a more physical level, and that was really wonderful. But being able to have that large scale, that large community, and reach out to them in that way. Technology is a barrier. We work with a lot of rural communities, so there's not internet, or there is shoddy internet, or there's not access to computers, right? There's no library there that a public space where anybody can access that if they don't have it at home. So that has been a little bit of a barrier, but finding ways to work around that. For our accidental drug poisoning crisis, we have a national drug checking alert system, which is really wonderful. So we're able to send out alerts across the country, put in by organizations and by people who use drugs, to let us know what's happening in the community through drug testing, through, I thought that I was taking meth, but I ended up taking carfentanil. So, having those things come in, and then having those community partners that we have print those out and distribute them into community for people who don't have access to technology. So, finding ways around it, working together. Again, it's that really collaborative work, finding ways to meet the community where they're at and to meet each other where we can, I think has been very beneficial. But overall, a very organic transition, and successful for a national program.
Amazing. I want to give the collected folks one more chance to raise your hand and throw in any questions you might have for Karley. Can we give it a 3? Oh, there's a question. Deborah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much again, Karley. I have this question that's been bothering my mind. Last year, December, I underwent a project for a community outreach, and I've been thinking about strategies and methodologies that can be employed to measure the impact and success of that project. So I don't know if you have any insights on how strategies or methodologies that can be employed to measure impact and success of a project.
Yeah, I don't do our reporting and performance measurement. We have somebody who does that specifically. But what I have done in working with her is she works very heavily with testimonials. So reaching out to folks who have accessed the program, asking them what the impact has been from them, how have they benefited. We do surveys before and after each one of our courses. So we have a QR code that goes up on the screen. The program that we use is called Thought Exchange. So people go up there, they fill out some very easy questions. She's able to pull some really hard data from that afterwards. What we look for, it's a training. So we look for how people feel going into the training with their skills, like the confidence in their skills. And then we have an assessment for afterwards to, I feel more confident. I feel like I gained knowledge. And if not, then we can work the program differently to make it more accessible, to make sure that people are feeling confident when they leave. But I think that hard data is done that way for us. And then we also, like I said, the testimonials. So we ask folks for experience. We get emails from a lot of people. And then when, we plan to sunset programs, we make sure that we set up a bunch of interviews with folks. So people who have accessed our services, largely people who we have deemed as partners, we will set up interviews with them to make sure that we're getting as much information as possible, whether that be constructive feedback, whether that be, the things that they've enjoyed, the things that they have benefited from that, but just being able to get those true stories from folks about how they have interacted with the program, I think is the most genuine way to do it. Again, it's just showing up and having a conversation. And I think that you can get a lot of honest feedback and find out how effective what you're doing is by just talking to the folks that you're working with.
Thank you.
Of course.
I just want to say to Karley, thank you so much. This has been a really great conversation this morning, and I think you've shared a lot, and people have learned a lot about your experience. And I really want to express my appreciation for you taking the time today.
Well, thanks for having me, Kevin. I'm very happy to be here and talk to everybody.